No one expects a quiet memorial parking lot to become the place where a life lesson is learned, and no one expects a moment meant for remembrance to turn into a crossroads between cruelty and character. But that morning, just after sunrise, that's exactly what happened. The memorial stood at the edge of town, framed by tall trees and stone walkways worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Names etched into black granite reflected the sky like a mirror, thousands of them. Some belonged to men who never made it home. Others belonged to those who carried their memories for the rest of their lives. 82-year-old Arthur Linwood arrived the way he always did, slowly, carefully, with the patience of a man who had learned that rushing rarely solved anything. His truck bore the marks of time, just like his hands. Arthritis stiffened his fingers. A small hearing device sat behind his right ear. On the dashboard rested a folded American flag, faded but carefully preserved. Arthur wasn't there to make a statement. He wasn't there to argue, that he wasn't there to be seen. He came every year to stand in silence. Arthur held a valid handicap placard, and the closest parking space to the memorial was clearly marked. But when he pulled in, three young men were already there, leaning against a glossy sports car, laughing loudly, phones raised, cameras rolling. Arthur shut off his engine and stepped out, steadying himself on the door. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "That space is reserved. I have a permit." The young men turned, grinning as if they'd been waiting for something like this. The one in front, tall, confident, dressed head to toe in expensive streetwear, tilted his phone slightly, ensuring the camera caught everything. "What's the problem, old-timer?" he said, loud enough for his followers to hear. "Plenty of spaces around." Arthur gestured gently. "I don't walk very well. That's why these spots exist." The young man laughed. His friends laughed louder. "You hear that?" he said to the camera. "He thinks rules apply to him." Arthur shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just asking politely." That was when the young man stepped closer. "Mind your business," he snapped. "Nobody owes you anything." Then, for reasons that would later cost him everything, he struck Arthur across the face. "It wasn't filmed as an accident. It wasn't edited out. It wasn't stopped." The phone stayed up. The comments were already rolling in. Arthur stumbled backward, barely catching himself before falling. His hearing aid dislodged and skidded across the pavement. Pain flashed across his face. Not just physical, but something deeper. "Please," Arthur said quietly. "I don't want trouble." The young man smirked. "Relax. This is content." One of the others laughed. "But he's going to tell us some war story next." Arthur bent slowly, hands trembling as he tried to retrieve his hearing aid. Before he could reach it, the young man nudged it farther away with his shoe. "What's wrong?" he mocked. "Can't hear so good?" Arthur's palms scraped against the asphalt. A thin line of blood appeared. What the three young men didn't realize, what they couldn't hear over their own laughter, was the sound of chairs moving inside the building behind them, in the memorial hall's back room. A group of 40 motorcycle riders had gathered for a scheduled meeting. They were men and women of different ages, backgrounds, and professions, but they shared a bond forged through years of loyalty, discipline, and mutual respect. They weren't a gang. They weren't looking for trouble. They were a brotherhood built on protection and accountability. Through the large window facing the parking lot, they had seen everything: the slap, the laughter, the humiliation. A broad-shouldered man with silver streaks in his beard rose slowly from his seat. His name was Caleb Ironholt, and he was the chapter lead. His voice was calm, but firm. "We have a problem." No one rushed, and no one shouted. They stood together and walked out, side by side, boots hitting the pavement in steady rhythm. The laughter outside faded. The young man filming turned, still smiling, until he realized he was no longer the center of attention. 40 riders stood behind him, not threatening, not yelling, just watching. Caleb stepped forward. "Turn the camera off," he said. The young man scoffed. "It's a praying man. Chill." Caleb's eyes shifted to Arthur, still crouched on the ground. "That man is bleeding." "So," the young man replied. "He shouldn't have run his mouth." One of the riders, a woman with weathered gloves and calm eyes, knelt beside Arthur. "Sir," she said gently, "are you all right?" Arthur nodded, though his hands shook. "I just wanted to park," he whispered. The bikers exchanged looks, not of anger but disappointment. Caleb spoke again. You assaulted an elderly man. On camera. The young man puffed his chest. I've got millions of followers. You think anyone cares? Another rider pulled out his phone. Not to film, but to read. Name's Logan Reed, he said. Known online for shock pranks. He scrolled. Harassing strangers. Mocking the homeless. Destroying personal property. Logan shrugged. It's entertainment. Caleb shook his head. No, it's cruelty. Arthur slowly stood, supported by one of the riders. Please, Arthur said softly. I don't want anyone hurt. Caleb nodded. No one will be. He turned back to Logan. You're going to delete the video. Logan laughed. Not happening. Caleb didn't raise his voice. You don't get a profit from humiliation. Logan tried to step away, but found himself blocked, not touched, just surrounded. His bravado faded. Fine, he muttered. I'll delete it later. No, Caleb said. Now. Logan hesitated, then complied. Video after video disappeared. My channel, Logan whispered. You're ruining my life. Arthur looked at him then, not with anger, but sadness. Son, Arthur said, do you know why I come here every year? Logan didn't answer. Arthur pointed toward the memorial wall. I come for Private Daniel Moore. He was 21. He pulled me out of a burning vehicle under fire. He didn't make it. The parking lot was silent. He told me to live well, to be kind, to stand up for others. Arthur met Logan's eyes. You live for attention. He died for people he'd never meet. Logan swallowed. I'm sorry, he said. Arthur shook his head. You're afraid. That's not the same thing. Caleb stepped aside and dialed his phone. Yes, he said calmly. We need an officer. Assault of a senior citizen. Yes, we have video. Logan's phone slipped from his hand. Police arrived within minutes. Logan was escorted away. Quiet now. Humbled. The story spread fast, but not the way Logan had intended. Headlines read, Online influencer arrested after harassing decorated veteran. Sponsorships vanished. Accounts were suspended. The applause he chased disappeared overnight. Meanwhile, people began asking about Arthur. They learned he had served 2 tours overseas. They learned he'd earned commendations he never spoke about. They learned he volunteered at shelters and schools. Donations poured in. Arthur gave every dollar to veteran outreach programs. The riders invited Arthur to ride with them. Not on a bike, but in a custom-built sidecar designed for comfort and safety. He accepted. Months later, Arthur returned to the memorial. This time, someone waited for him. Logan, an O camera, an O entourage. Just a man carrying an envelope. I was wrong, Logan said. Not for getting caught. For who I was. He handed Arthur the envelope. Inside was money, earned from honest work. For veterans, Logan said. I'm trying to do better. Arthur smiled. That's how change begins. They sat together. Arthur told stories, not of battles, but of friendships. Logan listened, really listened. Years later, Logan would speak to students. Not as an influencer, but as a warning that he always ended the same way. Fame fades. Character stays. And every Veterans Day, Arthur stood at the memorial, never alone, because respect isn't content, honor isn't a trend, and some lessons are earned the hard way. End message for viewers. Optional: respect those who sacrificed, protect the vulnerable, and remember, real strength is shown in how we treat others.